After over a decade of rumours, the Krypton Lloyd anime has finally been confirmed, and fans across the world can finally stop telling people, no, Hatsune Miku isn't an anime character. I've been thinking about how the characters could, and probably should, be characterised. I know a lot of people have thoughts on this, but these are my thoughts based on hours of needless research. My first thought on this is that Krypton, or whoever drives the anime, needs to go hard on giving the characters depth or it's not worth doing at all. We all know Miku is perfect and Rin's a brat, but without thought or motivation, a Krypton Lloyd anime is going to be really bland and boring. My second thought is that they have to commit to the anime being a complete spin-off or a canonical part of their franchise. The idea that the characters can be anything we want them to be is such an integral part of their appeal and the creative nature of their existence, so I feel like any characterized content should be considered spin-off so creators can still project and interpret the characters however they want. There are so many people who will get elitist over "this song doesn't suit Miku's canonical personality," and that strips creators of any motivation to interpret and present their own thoughts, and would honestly ruin a lot of the community and create divides we just don't need. These are personality AU Vocaloids. Let creators still have their fun. So obviously characterizing characters designed to be blank slates is really hard, but the Vocaloid community has projected a few traits onto the characters that have really stuck. The motif items, for example, like they're not game-changing in defining the characters, but they give us simple likes to build on. I find a lot of community-based traits have made their way into official content too, like consider the choreography for the concerts and games. Luca and Mako have a lot of slower songs with sexy choreography, while Len has boppier songs with breakdancing and flips. The choice of songs and outfits is actually super important to how Krypton wants the characters to be seen and interpreted, and while it's tricky to pinpoint traits when Miku does Alien Alien and Romeo and Cinderella in the same show, Krypton still has a public image in mind when they pick songs for concerts and games. Imagine if they let Miku sing Mind Brand in front of thousands of people. I think the best way to assign traits to the characters is to consider how they're portrayed in a public sense, as in during concerts and in official content, and really lean into how someone unfamiliar with the characters would see them. Obviously, this is hard for me because I'm so invested in them and I have my own headcanons, but for the sake of analysis, I'm going to try and forget my own biases. I've looked at official concerts and lined up songs that appear more than once to try and pinpoint recurring themes, motifs, and tones. This was way easier for Kaito and Mako since they have so few songs, but Miku was an absolute drag. Anyway, here's what my hours of research resulted in. The first thing I looked at was Miku's tearful speech from Magical Mirai 2017. In it, she tears up and sounds like she's actually about to cry, using the breaths from her voice bank to give her more emotion. I think this was a cute touch to her 10th anniversary concerts and gave concert attendees a really unique experience, but also opens a really interesting emotional dialogue because she asks the audience to continue supporting her, kind of like a real performer would do. Of course people are going to keep supporting you, Miku, you're perfect. If we assume Miku is an idol in the anime, this gives us an idea of the kind of person she is, or the kind of persona she has on stage. Because I'm only using their performances as a basis for my analysis, most of my comments revolve around the characters as performers and their relationships with music, but that alone gives me enough to work from. In terms of the actual songs, I'm going to focus on the top 3 recurring solos for each character. Miku's top 3 are Tell Your World, World Is Mine, and the intense singing of Hatsune Miku. Luca's are Luca Luca Night Fever, Double Lariat, and Just Be Friends. Rin's are Melancholic, Kokoro, and Tokyo Teddy Bear. Len's are Fireflower, Law Evading Rock, and Servant of Evil. Mako's are Pianoforte Scandal, Change Me, and Lover's Suicide Oblivion. Finally, Kaito's are Pain Drea, Dr. Funk Beat, and Snowman. I actually have no idea if I'm saying Pain Drea right, but not gonna lie, I don't think anyone knows how to say it properly, so I'm just gonna keep pronouncing it like that for now. If you actually know, please let me know in the comments. Let's start with Mako, since she's the easiest. Overall, her choreography is pretty sexy, or at least as sexy as a hologram can try to be. There's lots of hip swings, drops, very dramatic movements, and kind of risque moves. Again, as risque as a hologram can be. This tells me they want Mako to appear mature, ladylike, but also a bit spicy. Typically, Mako and Kaito are pinned as older than the other 4, so this makes sense and sets Mako apart from Luca. They both have similar vibes, but are still distinct characters. The choice of songs for Mako also typically lands in the jazzy genres, with lots of brass instruments and piano. She's the only one with a consistent genre which made drawing character traits a lot easier, but didn't leave much room for interpretation. Kaito, on the other hand, is a bit of an enigma. His choreography is overall very dramatic and expressive, but his top 3 songs are so far apart it's nearly impossible to slap a genre on him. Which is why I'm not going to. There's something more interesting in a character who can't fit into a box as opposed to one who sings the same jazz tunes at every show. Meiko. The fact that Paindria appeared so many times gave me a real dorky history teacher vibe, like the kind of teacher that loves what they study but gets way overexcited when someone asks them about it. Servant of Evil is the outlier of Len's top songs, but I'm familiar with this gremlin's choreography because he's always doing those big spin kicks. I think it's cool they gave Len lots of breakdancing moves, but it's unfortunate they barely turn up in his solo songs. Duets with Rin aside, he's a bit static and repetitive on his own. The idea that he performs confidently with Rin but is more nervous on his own is actually a really interesting thought and gives us some great character depth, so it's not such a bad thing. Rin, on the other hand, is kind of like Kaito with her array of songs. In Tokyo Teddy Bear, she plays guitar when it suits her, stopping to do some dancing at random intervals. Unlike Len, she's still very expressive on her own, even during slower songs. I really like the idea that she's kind of blasé about her music and just plays for fun, but the competitive nature siblings usually have means she practices a lot to outshine Len. Her ability to adapt to different genres would be hell for Len, but I'll go into more detail on that later. The fact that Luca's top songs are all from early days gave me the idea that she's really into the classics. She's not as into modern electronic style music as the others, but isn't afraid to give it a shot. This is what sets her apart from Meiko the most. That and the fact that her choreographies aren't as forwardly sexy. We still get lots of hip swings and a lasso motion from Double Lariat, but it's not on the same level as Meiko's dancing. If we accept that Luca is younger than Meiko, this makes sense, but it also allows for more distinctive character traits between them. Finally, Miku. She gets wings in the intense singing of Hatsune Miku. I don't know what else to tell you. The main thing I can draw from her top songs is the fact that she shows off a lot. World Is Mine is so full of character and charm it would be very easy to base her purely off the one song, but that would ignore the more emotional lyrics of Tell Your World. These 3 really threw me for a loop, but after considering a few things, I finally came up with something semi-coherent. After analysing and noting some key things from the concerts, I am proud to explain how I would characterise each of the Kryptonloids for an anime setting. Let's start with Miku. Miku knows she's talented and enjoys giving other people a voice through music. Whether it's singing covers or songs her peers have written, she just loves sharing those creations with the world. In this regard, she's very generous and is always willing to take on a new song, giving credit where it's due, but there's an underlying arrogance and a desire to be the centre of attention that drive her. She gets shirty when she has to share the stage, or when she can't perform the final song, or if she's not allowed to sing what she wants to for whatever reason. This could be interpreted as selfishness, or as dedication to the composer she's singing for. I like the idea that Miku doesn't really write any music herself. Maybe she's tried but didn't like what she created, or just isn't as interested in sharing her own ideas. This leads into Miku's insecurity, the idea that if she doesn't perform perfectly, people will stop listening to her. She holds herself to an incredibly high standard and punishes herself when she makes mistakes. She'd absolutely try and learn every instrument and be able to play some to an extent, but is more of an instrumental jack of all trades, master of none. She wouldn't say no to performing with an instrument she's only somewhat familiar with though, even if she knows she can't play it to her standards. I'd liken this to Omoi yo Hitotsu ni Nare at Aqua's first Love Live Day 2. Being put under a lot of pressure to play an instrument she's not familiar with would cause her to make one small mistake and panic big time as a result. Outside of music, Miku is likable but distant. She doesn't really engage with things she's not interested in and finds them to be a waste of time. Who's got time for homework when a new karaoke bar just opened up? Her dedication to her passions leads her to burn out and be left with nothing to do because she's put all her hobby eggs in the music basket and won't try anything new. This is both because she's stubborn and because she won't put time into anything that won't further her musical skills or what she considers will be her career. This would also lead to a lack of socialization, probably resulting in her closest friends forcing her to relax and get out of the house. She'd never be seen outside alone, because she'd never go out on her own volition unless it appealed to one of her core interests. Despite this, she's incredibly cheery towards her fans, engaging with them and always happy to pose for photos and sign autographs. She's quick to put on a brave face when someone approaches her like this, even if it's to her own detriment. As a result of that, I don't think Miku knows how to take care of herself, and I have a strong reason why. If we assume they're human in this iteration, Miku might have been a performer since childhood, in and out of shows with no real time for school. She'd have been pandered to, taken care of, and not have to worry about learning life basics. Most of her learning would have happened via tutors and homeschooling. When she has to start taking care of herself, she's a wreck and probably ends up ordering food instead of trying to cook. Like, same babe, I'm a wreck too. Moving on to Rin, I'm going to try and cover the twins separately because they overlap a lot. I'm also stating now that Rin and Len are twins in this iteration because it's narratively more interesting and makes the most sense. Because of the wide range of songs she brings to the table, I think Rin is the kind of person who jumps from hobby to hobby but can never settle on one. She'll turn up one day with dyed blue hair and say she got into hairstyling, and the next week show up in skates and claim roller derby is her new thing. The one consistent thing she enjoys is music, but she never got as into it as Miku or Len. When she actually listens to music, her taste is so all over the place, it seems like she'll listen to anything and enjoy it, which is true to an extent. Being so easily bored means she gets tired of being locked into a genre or typecast as a particular style, so she tries it all. There are some genres she enjoys more than others, but she's always looking for something fresh to try. She loves learning new things and is receptive to suggestions from her peers. Alone, Rin is confident, dedicated, and competitive. She won't back down from a challenge and will try anything that crosses her path, especially if someone says she can't handle it. Her hard-headed nature makes her seem abrasive, but when she puts time into getting to know someone, they realise she's just looking for a place in the world. While she's preoccupied trying something new, she's fully focused and motivated. But when boredom strikes, she isn't shy about letting people know. Between interests, she can get irritable and snappy, often taking her frustrations out on Len. Rin's flakiness and blasé nature have led her to have niche knowledge of many things, sometimes handy and sometimes completely useless. She's a treasure trove of random facts and skills she tries to implement wherever she can, in a way to show off what she's learned, but also because she wants to be helpful. If there's one thing Rin's good at, it's always having a suggestion or an idea. The quality of those suggestions waver, but at the very least she can get the conversational ball rolling. Rin doesn't need icebreakers. She is an icebreaker. I mentioned Rin was competitive, and that particularly shines when she's around Len. He's more calm and focused than his sister, but the two have that typical sibling rivalry energy and are constantly trying to outshine one another. Len, being more focused than Rin, decided to pursue music and is still struggling to find his sound. He enjoys dancing, particularly breakdancing and dramatic styles that involve jumps, kicks, flips, etc. He's very athletic and enjoys showing off, always down to do a spin kick whenever asked. Len's biggest issue is that where Rin floats from genre to genre quite happily, Len wants to find his niche and stay in it. This is why a lot of his choreography involves similar moves and tricks. He knows what he's good at. Len isn't as confident as Rin, but is able to focus on what he wants more easily than she can. While she's waiting for a genre or hobby to suit her, Len is trying to suit his favourite genre. We know he can sing gentler, more emotional songs like Servant of Evil, but his passion is faster, more intense music he can really sink his teeth into. Like Miku, he holds himself to a high standard, but not as high as her. He's not trying to be a jack of all trades, he's trying to be a master of one. This results in a very determined and focused personality that can come across as very intense. Len's likely to get annoyed if something's in his way, he can't get something right, or is not able to complete a task he set out to do. However, he has other likes and interests he can turn to when he needs a break. In order to stay fit enough to do flips, Len would likely be into sports, but I also think he'd write music to try and suit his style. If the music out there won't work for him, why not write his own? This would be something he's a bit embarrassed about, not likely to share with anyone until it's perfect. Again, he's holding himself to a standard and won't let anyone see his work until he's absolutely happy with it. He'd be quite a private person in that regard, not willing to open up unless his emotions boiled over and stopped him from achieving his goals. So far, I've made Len sound really serious, but I think compared to Rin, he needs to be a more mellow character. Things Rin doesn't care about are areas Len tries to excel, which would be a great motive for him to hide his music. If Rin's able to ride with ease, Len would feel inferior next to her and wait until he thought his work was better than hers to show anyone. On the other hand, Len's dedication to dance would leave Rin feeling a bit bland when she performs next to him. Just look at the old choreography for Michikata no Cho, they've basically already written this dynamic. Let's look at Luca now. I think having her a year or two older than Miku and the twins is a good move because it creates a bridge between them, Kaito, and Meiko. I mentioned I think Luca's into the classics, and as a result is more interested in acoustic instruments. She'd definitely own a piano over a keyboard, even if a keyboard was more space efficient. She's much more interested in studying music and putting her own spin on it, and perhaps isn't as interested in performing as the others. She's definitely the most humble of the group, despite her talents and ability to suit most genres. As a result, she's more comfortable performing with someone else, like Miku, but follows their lead. That being said, she's not afraid to show off what she can do if the mood strikes her. She's also not afraid to try new things and still takes an interest in modern music, not shying away from unfamiliar territory. Her calm and adaptive nature allow her to try new things without getting overwhelmed. Being so calm can lead to complacency, and she's easily persuaded to try things so far out of her comfort zone she doesn't quite realise they don't suit her until she's too invested. I think Miku and Meiko would be the worst influences on her, with Miku pushing her to try poppier songs and Meiko pushing her to perform more risque choreography. Not to bring non-concert songs into this, but think Blackjack. I think Luca would have a similar arc to Umi from Love Live. When Nozomi suggests writing a love song, Umi gets incredibly flustered, turning off a romantic movie before two characters kiss and calling it embarrassing. She agrees with Maki when she says they don't need a love song, and yet helps to write one anyway to fulfill Nozomi's dream. It's this kind of sacrifice and willingness to overcome emotions that makes Luca a great friend and emotional support. She's by far the most grounded of the cast and balances the more chaotic energies of Miku and Rin. She's typically more mature than Meiko and is usually the one chasing after her friends when they get into trouble. The idea that Luca tutors music in her spare time really appeals to me and cements her as a very mature and sensible character. I think the others would look to her for ideas, solutions, and advice in general because even if she's not familiar with the issue at hand, her level-headedness would help her analyse the situation and offer common sense advice. I also think she's embarrassed by things she tries but doesn't really enjoy, which is where songs like Blackjack come into play. Although she never sings it at concerts, I think it's the kind of thing she tried, got really embarrassed about, and tries to cover up. On the other hand, while she's comfortable singing songs like Just Be Friends and Leia, she had a lot of fun with Luca Luca Night Fever, and that's what led her to such titles as Dreaming Choo Choo. Moving on to the apparent adults of the group, I'm going to continue with my theory that Kaito is an overexcitable history teacher. Let's assume Kaito and Meiko are adults and Kaito is a teacher. His love of weird, obscure music alienated him at first, but after learning how to sing folk songs, people realised he had a real knack for it. This led him down a rabbit hole of strange music, and like Luca, he's more interested in research than performance. However, he's not as set into the classics as Luca and enjoys pretty much any genre. It was his dedication to research that landed him a teaching job, even if his knowledge is super niche. As a researcher, Kaito is passionate and dedicated, often spending copious amounts of time looking for a particular song, translation, or source. He's the kind of person with a huge library of really obscure books and knows a decent amount of at least one dead language. Kind of like with Rin's knowledge of many things, Kaito has knowledge of very specific things. His wisdom isn't always as applicable as Rin's, but he spec'd more into intelligence than she did, so he knows where to apply what he knows. Although he can come across as skittish and overexcitable, there's an underlying love of teaching and sharing his knowledge that shines through when someone asks him the right question. He's able to present weird knowledge in a way that's understandable and accessible because chances are he had to make that knowledge accessible in the first place. I don't think Kaito is ever a serious person, but it wouldn't take much to ruin his cheery demeanour. He understands his interests and hobbies are weird but hates when people go after him for it. He's already dealt with the alienation his passions brought him, but that doesn't mean he's over the pain. While in present times he appears more confident and cheery, I think in the past he put up walls and didn't let people close so they wouldn't be able to make fun of him. This would make it harder for him to open up, so he holds the people who understand him the closest. Those people would know not to make snide remarks about him and how to avoid upsetting him. Finally, Meiko. The whole mature woman trope on its own is pretty boring, but I think Meiko's passion for jazzy tunes gives us enough to work from. She knows her comfort zone, but she's adventurous and still tries new things from time to time. While she'll find most of her ventures don't really work for her, she's always happy to return to her roots. Unlike Luca, she didn't find her version of Luca Luca Night Fever, but finds comfort in knowing where her skills are and honing in on them. Those skills being sultry jazz vocals, of course. It makes sense timeline-wise that Meiko got into music first. Not only was she the first of the anime-style Kryptonloids to be released, but in terms of story, this works the best. She really enjoys performing and likely writes her own songs, since she knows what she likes and what she's comfortable with. She's clearly not afraid of more risque choreography and likely feels comfortable performing in that manner. I do think it's a bit of a facade, and offstage she's more mellow and maybe a bit immature. Less so than Miku, but Meiko's a bit of a diva and believes the other Kryptonloids perform because she performed first. Meiko walked so Miku could run. While Miku likely contributed to Meiko's popularity, she'll never admit that. There's a stubbornness to Meiko's general demeanour she's able to disguise, but it would definitely show when she gets agitated. I don't think she'd be as bad as to demand all the green Skittles be removed from her pre-show snack bowls, but there would definitely be some snarky comments if someone didn't iron her outfits properly. In that regard, I think she'd often take matters into her own hands, even pushing professionals out of the way to make sure things are exactly as she wants them. There wouldn't be anger behind these moves, but exasperation at being over trying to get her ideas across. It's not that she's bad at communicating, she just struggles to explain that she wants the stage lights to do a particular thing, or that her hair has to sit a particular way. Like Miku, she may have been performing since childhood and has very specific tastes, and has picked up a few tricks over her years on stage. There's definitely pride in her presentation, and if she isn't showing her best side, she doesn't want to be seen at all. This pride would carry to anyone she performs with, or even teaches. Following on from Kaito's teaching position, Meiko would likely be a music tutor. I don't think school teaching is her thing, so she offers private tuition instead, and she takes a lot of pride in her students. Perhaps she inspired Luca to take on tutoring. She'd definitely be fussy about who she teaches, but her willingness to branch into different genres would allow her to adapt to her students' abilities. She'd attend as many of her students' performances as she could and be really supportive of them, not realizing she's being a bit overbearing. While some students would find that really intimidating, those who don't would stand to learn a lot of really valuable things from her. There's a lot of duets at Vocaloid concerts, so I want to quickly cover the relationship dynamics seen on stage. I'm only focusing on one song for each duo, and they are Rin and Len, Remote Control, Miku and Luca, World's End Dance Hall, Kaito and Len, Erase or Zero, Miku and Kaito, Oedo Julia Night, Kaito and Meiko, On the Rocks, and Miku, Rin and Len, Shake It. I've already kind of covered Rin and Len, so I'll start with them, and I'd like to clarify that while Mijikata no Cho is technically their most performed song, I'm discounting it because Rin was removed in the more recent concerts. Remote Control pretty much cements these two as sibling rivals. They can perform perfectly together and can actually use their familial love-hate to fuel their performances. The more emotion there's behind a performance, the more it's going to connect with an audience and really stick with them, and these two know that. Their sibling bond is unbreakable and they do really get along, but like any family, get sick of one another from time to time. While this could definitely get in the way and ruin performances, they know when to pull their heads in, put their differences aside, and put on one hell of a show. If there's one thing the twins know, it's that they complement one another and look really impressive on stage. They've known each other their entire lives, and no one knows them better than they do. When one of them needs support or help, Len is more likely to talk to Rin and be emotionally supportive in person, while Rin is more likely to leave Len gifts with handwritten notes. They're not always at one another's throats and are mostly civil around one another, but all it takes is for one of them to make a snide remark to get their arguing started. Luca is absolutely the one taking care of Miku's mental health, ensuring she gets out of the house and takes breaks. Her gentle nature is a refreshing and welcome presence for Miku, who knows Luca's trying to do her best for her friend. In return, Miku listens to Luca and is the kind of positive influence Luca needs to break out of her shell. Miku sees Luca's potential and wants her to shine, so doesn't mind sharing the stage with her. Luca follows Miku's lead, but Miku encourages her to let her own personality shine. While Luca doesn't mind being in Miku's shadow, she appreciates the encouragement and takes the support to heart, pushing herself to be as effortlessly confident as her friends. I like to think World's End Dance Hall was Miku's idea, but Magnet was Luca's idea. I said I was going to keep my headcanons out of this, but they're both gay and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Kaito and Len is an interesting one, because I think Len genuinely takes an interest in Kaito's work and politely listens to his rambling. On the other hand, Len helps Kaito with more modern music and choreography. Even though their interests are vastly different, they have a strong friendship and actively support one another. They're both open to learning and are receptive to one another's opinions, even if they don't always understand what the other is trying to get across. Len is definitely one of the only kids who actively pays attention in Kaito's classes. Even if history isn't his thing, he thinks Kaito is a great teacher and finds his classes engaging enough to stay awake during them. Aside from Miku, Len is one of Kaito's biggest supporters when it comes to pushing him to perform and share his passions with the world. Like with Len and Kaito, Miku is interested in Kaito's teaching but quickly loses interest when he moves on to topics she's not as invested in. Kaito knows never to try and take Miku's spotlight, which is why he takes more of a backup role when performing with her, but I also think he's a bit intimidated by her. He wouldn't appreciate it when she falls asleep during his classes, but is understanding enough to know that she wouldn't get much out of obscure music history anyway. There's a lot of respect between them and they're able to collaborate quite well. I like the idea that Miku found old footage of Kaito performing Dr. Funk Beat and that's why he was so on board to do Ohedo Julia Night. He does enjoy those styles of music and getting out of his comfort zone is a refreshing break from his usual schedule. Kaito would be very patient with Miku in return, probably offering her extensions on assignments to make sure she passes. Meiko is absolutely a bad influence on Kaito, but like with Miku, he welcomes the change of pace. Meiko is to Kaito as Luca is to Miku. Only Meiko takes Kaito to bars and he ends up making sure she gets home safely. Kaito is painfully patient with Meiko, and while she doesn't always realise the kind gestures he does for her, she certainly appreciates his calm and generous demeanour. The idea that these two help each other with their students really appeals to me, and if one has an issue, they don't hesitate to contact the other. They're part of one another's support networks and are able to relate on a lot of topics, and sharing an interest in the same genre certainly helps them to connect. They might have been friends before finding their teaching roles, and perhaps they performed together before Kaito stepped back from the spotlight to focus on teaching. Meiko would have been sad about this, but still supportive and glad Kaito finally found his calling. As a treat, I'm going to cover Miku, Rin, and Len. I think Rin and Len feel overshadowed compared to Miku, but still enjoy working with her. She's able to help them use their particular talents harmoniously with her own, even if she still takes center stage. While Rin would never let anyone know how she feels, Len is more complacent as he's just happy to perform with his friends. Miku would stop any fights between the twins before they break out, both because she hates when her friends argue and because it hinders progress in their collaborative works. If the twins stopped talking to one another, Miku would play messenger and try to get them to sort it out, probably concocting some scheme to get them to talk. In the choreography for Shake It, Len still gets to do his tricks, but unsurprisingly only when Miku isn't singing. He flips about when Rin is singing, which I find pretty funny, but also plays into them trying to outshine one another. I've already spoken a lot on this, so I won't do the other pairs, but I got to watch a lot of concert footage while researching for this, and it's only fueled my need for Miku Expo Australia. The chances I can go overseas to a Miku Expo are so low right now, but I will do anything for a Melbourne show. I'll travel to Sydney if I have to.